The billionaire was about to fire everyone, until the waitress handed him a hidden USB. What if the most powerful decision of your life came from the most unexpected person? Harrison Blake sat in his corner booth at Murphy's Diner, the same cracked vinyl seat he'd claimed every Tuesday morning for 3 years. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he couldn't taste anything anyway. The manila folder beside his untouched eggs contained pink slips for 400 employees, people with families, dreams, mortgages. People who trusted him. The morning light filtered through the diner's smudged windows, casting long shadows across his weathered face. At 42, Harrison had built an empire from nothing, but today felt like watching it crumble in his hands. The quarterly reports were brutal. The board's ultimatum was clear. Cut costs or lose everything. Mia approached with her usual warm smile, coffee pot in hand. She'd served him countless times, always remembering how he liked his coffee, always asking about his day with genuine care. Today, she looked different somehow, nervous, like she was carrying a secret that might change everything. Where are you watching from tonight? Harrison had never intended to become the kind of boss who fired people. When he'd started Blake Industries 15 years ago in his garage, it was supposed to be different. Every employee mattered. Every person had a name, a story, a reason to belong. But somewhere between becoming a millionaire and then a billionaire, those faces had blurred into spreadsheet numbers. More coffee, Mr. Blake? Mia's voice carried that familiar warmth that somehow made even his worst mornings bearable. She'd been working at Murphy's since her husband died 2 years ago, raising her 8-year-old daughter alone while studying accounting at night school. Harrison knew because she'd mentioned it once, the way people share pieces of their lives with strangers who listen. I'm good, thanks. He glanced up at her, noting the worry lines around her eyes. Everything okay, Mia? She hesitated, wiping her hands on her apron. Actually, Mr. Blake, I need to tell you something. It's about your company. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. I found something last night, and I think you need to see it. Harrison's stomach tightened. Bad news had a particular sound, and this was it. What do you mean? Mia glanced around the nearly empty diner, then slipped into the booth across from him. My neighbor works in your IT department. Janet Mills? She's been there 12 years. Harrison nodded, remembering a quiet woman with kind eyes. She came to my apartment last night, crying. Said she'd discovered something on the company servers that could save everyone's jobs, but she was too scared to come forward. The weight of the pink slips seemed to press heavier against Harrison's chest. 400 families. 400 people who'd trusted him to protect their futures. What kind of something? Mia reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small USB drive, her hands trembling slightly. She said the financial problems aren't what they seem. That someone's been hiding money, cooking the books. She copied everything before they could delete it, but she was terrified they'd blame her for snooping. Harrison stared at the tiny device that could either destroy his company or save it. The morning sun had shifted, casting Mia's face in golden light, and for the first time in months, he felt something that might have been hope. Harrison's hands shook as he took the USB drive. The plastic felt warm from Mia's pocket, and suddenly the weight of everything, the layoffs, the board meetings, the sleepless nights, concentrated into this tiny piece of technology. Mia, do you understand what you're telling me? If someone's been embezzling funds, if the board knows. I know it sounds crazy. Mia's brown eyes filled with tears she was trying not to shed. But Janet's not the kind of person who makes things up. She's worked for you since the beginning, Mr. Blake. She remembers when you used to know everyone's birthday, when you'd stop by the warehouse just to ask how people were doing. Those words hit harder than any quarterly report. Harrison did remember. He remembered Sharon in accounting showing him pictures of her grandkids, and Miguel from shipping who'd taught him Spanish curse words during lunch breaks. When had he stopped seeing them as people and started seeing them as expenses? Janet said the discrepancies started about 18 months ago, Mia continued, her voice steadying. Right after your company brought in that new financial consulting firm. The money's still there, but it's been moved around, hidden in fake overhead accounts and phantom consulting fees. Harrison's mind raced. 18 months ago. That was when CFO Marcus Reed had insisted on hiring Goldstein and Associates to streamline operations. The same firm that had recommended the massive layoffs just last week. The same firm whose recommendations the board had accepted without question. Why didn't Janet come to me directly? Harrison asked. Mia's smile was sad but understanding. Because men in suits don't usually listen to women in uniforms, Mr. Blake. Not until it's almost too late. She reached across the table and touched his hand gently. But I remembered how you always treat the people here. You look at us when you talk to us. You remember our names. That's not something a bad man does. The diner's bell chimed as the morning rush began, and Harrison realized he was at a crossroads. He could ignore this, proceed with the layoffs, and save himself the trouble of investigating. Or he could trust a waitress who'd shown him more loyalty in 5 minutes than his board had in 5 years. If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. Harrison pocketed the USB drive and looked into Mia's hopeful eyes. What's Janet's home address? I think it's time I paid one of my employees a visit. By 10 that morning, Harrison sat in Janet Mills' small living room, watching a woman who'd given 12 years of her life to his company shake with fear as she explained what she'd discovered. Her apartment was modest but tidy, filled with photos of her children and certificates from night school classes, the kind of life built on honest work and careful dreams. I didn't mean to find it, Janet whispered, clutching a coffee cup with both hands. I was doing routine maintenance on the servers when I noticed these strange file transfers happening after hours. Always from Marcus Reed's computer, always to accounts I'd never seen in our system before. Harrison studied the printed reports Janet had prepared. The numbers told a devastating story. Over 18 months, nearly $3 million had been siphoned from various departmental budgets into consulting fees for companies that didn't exist. The money was still there, just hidden so well that it made the company appear to be hemorrhaging cash. I've been losing sleep for weeks, Janet continued, her voice breaking. I kept thinking about all the families that would be hurt by the layoffs, all the people who've worked so hard. But I was terrified that if I came forward, they'd say I was the one stealing. Who would believe the IT lady over the CFO? Harrison felt an anger burning in his chest, unlike anything he'd experienced. Not just at Marcus Reed, but at himself. How had he become so disconnected from his own company that a theft of this magnitude could happen under his nose? How had he created an environment where loyal employees were too frightened to report crimes? Janet, he said softly, I need you to help me understand something. When did I become the kind of boss that people are afraid to talk to? She looked surprised by the question, then thoughtful. It wasn't you, Mr. Blake. It was them. The consultants, the board members, the people who kept telling you that caring about employees was outdated thinking. They built walls around you so high that we couldn't reach you anymore. The weight of that truth settled on Harrison like a physical burden. He'd allowed himself to become isolated from the very people whose lives depended on his decisions. Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments. Harrison stood up, his jaw set with determination. Janet, I need you to come with me to the office. Today. We're going to expose this theft, save those jobs, and remind everyone why this company exists. He paused, meeting her frightened eyes. Will you trust me one more time? The emergency board meeting that afternoon was unlike anything in Blake Industries' history. Harrison had called it for 2 o'clock, giving Marcus Reed no time to prepare or cover his tracks. The conference room buzzed with tension as board members filed in, expecting to finalize the layoff procedures. Marcus entered with his usual confident swagger, expensive suit perfectly pressed, not knowing that Janet Mills sat in Harrison's office with a laptop full of evidence and a team of forensic accountants Harrison had hired that morning. Gentlemen, Harrison began, standing at the head of the polished table. Before we discuss any layoffs, I think we need to address some interesting financial discoveries. Marcus shifted in his chair. Harrison, we've been through this. The numbers are clear. We need to cut costs immediately, or... The numbers are clear, Harrison agreed, sliding printed reports across the table. But not in the way you've presented them. He watched Marcus's face drain of color as he recognized Janet's documentation. It seems we've been paying quite a lot in consulting fees to companies that don't actually exist. The room erupted in confused murmurs as board members scanned the evidence. Harrison had spent 3 hours that afternoon with Janet and the forensic team, tracing every fake transaction, every hidden account, every cleverly disguised theft. "This is preposterous," Marcus stammered, but his voice lacked its usual authority. "These are legitimate business expenses. For Phoenix Consulting Group, which shares an address with a Starbucks?" Harrison's voice was steel. Or perhaps Meridian Financial Services, whose business license expired 2 years ago? He leaned forward. "Marcus, you've stolen nearly $3 million from this company while convincing me to fire 400 innocent people to cover your theft." The silence in the room was deafening. Harrison could see the shock and disgust on his board members' faces as they realized how completely they'd been manipulated. "Security is waiting outside," Harrison continued. "You have 5 minutes to clean out your office before they escort you out. The FBI will be in touch about the criminal charges." Marcus stood abruptly, his composure finally cracking. "You can't prove I was acting alone. This goes deeper than you think, Harrison. You have no idea who you're really fighting." But Harrison was no longer listening. As security led Marcus away, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: pride in doing the right thing, regardless of the consequences. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. Through the conference room window, he could see Janet in his office, no longer shaking with fear but sitting tall with the dignity of someone whose courage had saved hundreds of families. 3 weeks later, Harrison sat in his familiar booth at Murphy's Diner, but everything felt different. The manila folder beside his coffee now contained bonus checks instead of pink slips. The recovered funds had not only saved every job but also allowed the company to expand, hiring 50 new employees and increasing salaries across the board. Mia approached with her usual warm smile, but there was something new in her eyes, a quiet pride in what they'd accomplished together. "The usual, Mr. Blake?" "Actually," Harrison said, "I was hoping we could talk. I have something for you and Janet." He pulled out 2 envelopes from his jacket pocket. "Janet's been promoted to Chief Information Officer. The first woman to hold an executive position at Blake Industries. Seemed long overdue." Mia's eyes widened as she slipped into the booth. "She's going to cry happy tears for a week." "What about the other envelope?" Harrison smiled, feeling lighter than he had in years. "That's a full scholarship for your accounting program, plus a guarantee of employment in our financial department once you graduate. We need people who understand that numbers represent real families, real dreams." Tears spilled down Mia's cheeks as she stared at the envelope. "Mr. Blake, I don't know what to say. I was just doing what felt right. That's exactly why we need you." Harrison reached across the table and gently squeezed her hand. "You and Janet reminded me of something I'd forgotten. A company isn't a collection of assets and liabilities. It's a community of people who trust each other to do the right thing." The morning sun streamed through the diner's windows, the same light that had illuminated this life-changing conversation 3 weeks ago. But now it felt warm rather than harsh, hopeful rather than desperate. "I've been coming here for 3 years," Harrison continued, "and you've always treated me with kindness, even when I probably didn't deserve it. You saw something in me that I'd lost sight of myself. Thank you for that." Mia wiped her tears with her apron, laughing softly. "You were always a good man, Mr. Blake. You just needed someone to remind you." She stood up, then paused. "You know what the best part is? Janet told me that people at the company are smiling again. Really smiling, not just the polite kind." As Harrison walked back to his office that morning, he carried with him a renewed understanding of leadership. True power wasn't about commanding from a distance, It was about listening to a frightened IT worker, trusting a waitress's courage, and remembering that behind every number was a human being deserving of dignity and respect. The USB drive that had saved his company now sat in his desk drawer, but its real value wasn't the evidence it contained. It was the reminder that sometimes the most important messages come from the most unexpected messengers. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovering that kindness and courage can transform even the darkest situations into something beautiful.